Hello, I'm Claire Smith and welcome to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking about 4 brand new designer fragrances from 4 different houses that I've been trying out over a few days, and I just wanted to share my thoughts on them basically. I wanted to let you know whether I like them, whether I think they're original, whether I've smelt them before, and also whether I would consider purchasing them. So if you do like this kind of content and you haven't done already, then please do consider subscribing. I'm Claire Smith, I make videos all about perfume, perfume science, perfume history, perfume psychology, and I also just do some straight perfume reviews. So if you do end up liking this video, then please also press the like button. So the first fragrance I've tried is one from Gaultier, and this is a brand new pillar fragrance, and it's called Gaultier Divine. So this one got me because of the notes. The note listing just looked really interesting. So from the notes, it looked like a floral, aquatic, gourmand fragrance, and the thing that really piqued my interest was the listing of meringue. I absolutely love meringue in desserts, and I thought, wow, meringue fragrance would be absolutely delicious. So I was really curious to try this one. So this starts off with a sort of an aquatic feeling watermelon. The watermelon is really fresh. It smells almost like watermelon sweets, the foamy sweets, that kind of watermelon. And actually as this dries down, it becomes a little bit more salty, and there's also a little bit of a caramelized feel to it. I think that's probably meant to be the meringue, but when I think of meringue, I think of something powdery or something, you know, with a kind of texture to it. Here in this fragrance, that you don't really get that meringue kind of texture. It's more like something that's slightly golden, quite runny, quite watery, but still quite sweet. Something like a really light and very watery feeling caramel. So as this dries down further, it does get a little bit more salty, but it never really turns super marine. It still does have that aquatic feel to it, but it really is all about that kind of watermelon with that really strong sweetness with a slight saltiness. I describe this as something like a watermelon slushy or something like that, but with sort of popcorn, sweet, salty popcorn that you might have at a cinema. It does feel like a visit to a cinema in a way. I think this one, for me, just got a little bit too much into the dry down. So that sort of salty, aquatic, marine style touch to it just got a lot. And if I wore this on an empty stomach, it actually made me feel a little bit nauseous. But I do think this fragrance really was something very different. I personally didn't enjoy it, but I can see that it's very original. I can see that some people will really enjoy it because that watermelon note is so distinctive, and it does have that salty sweet thing going on. I think if you like fragrances like Paco Rabanne's Olympea, you might really like this fragrance. I found this to be quite long lasting. It was sort of on my skin for about 5 or 6 hours, but after that it's pretty much gone. It projected really strongly for the first couple of hours as well. It really was quite a lot. I think this fragrance is going to be pretty divisive. I think there's going to be very strong opinions on this one both ways. And it's definitely going to be that kind of love or hate feeling towards this. Personally, when I smell this close up, it's a total no for me. But when I smell this in the air, it's actually quite pleasant. And I think really, you know, that's the way most people experience fragrances, isn't it? So yeah, that's Jean-Paul Gaultier's Divine. So the next fragrance is one from Dior, and this one is a reformulation of a flanker. You know, Dior love to do this kind of thing where they take a fragrance that has been successful and they just completely change the notes, completely change how it smells, but call it exactly the same thing. And this is another example of that. So this one is Jadore L'Or. So this fragrance, I think, was originally released in 2010, and then it was reformulated in 2017, and it's been reformulated again. So this fragrance really does have that golden feeling to it. It makes me think more of liquid gold than it makes me think of the sun. So compared to the original, this is a heavier, more golden feeling and less fruity kind of fragrance. So this opens with a really watery feeling jasmine, which I think is maybe contributed to by the Lily of the Valley. It's also a little bit green even in the opening. I think Lily of the Valley can make people think of soaps, and I think this fragrance makes me think of soaps because it does have Lily of the Valley, but really this is not a soapy fragrance overall. I think I just get that kind of shampoo vibe generally from the Jadore line. This also has those solar feeling florals, so it has ylang ylang, and it also has orange blossom, and I would say the orange blossom is the thing that dominates maybe in the opening, but in the dry down I feel like the ylang ylang is probably slightly more dominant. Really overall, as this dries down, it doesn't change enormously actually. It becomes less watery, it becomes a little bit more golden feeling, and it also becomes a little bit musky, but really overall it doesn't really change that much. Really the only surprise for me here was a slight fruity feeling. I don't think there are fruits listed. I think it's just probably in my head, probably because of the ylang ylang. But it smells to me like there could be something like a mango maybe at points in this fragrance, but I don't think there is. I think it's just in my head. Really, this fragrance, to me, when I was wearing it the first time, just totally underwhelmed me. And the second time, I think I was even less impressed by it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not sharp. It's very, very smooth. It's a beautiful fragrance. It's just not really for me, and it doesn't excite me. I think, lasting power, there's no problem. It really does project quite well as well. It's everything that you would expect from a Dior fragrance. It just isn't exciting. And I think this one is definitely not one that I would want to purchase, but I don't think it's a bad fragrance at all. And I'm sure there are people out there who will love this one. So that's Jadore L'Or. So the next fragrance is one from Mugler, and this fragrance is the third fragrance in the Alien Goddess line. So this is Supra Floral. So Supra Floral, I've seen reviewed by some people who try and describe it in terms of the notes. So the notes include things like cactus flower and also desert rose. Personally, I don't know what they smell like, so I'm just going to tell you exactly what I think I smell. So this opens with something that resembles pear, but it's not sparkly, light, or even as fruity as pear or clear as pear, but it definitely does resemble pear. There's also something that smells a little bit like pick and mix sweets, and these pick and mix sweets are pastel coloured, they have a hard outer shell and they have a chewy centre, and they're really sweet, like tutti frutti kind of sweets. There's also something that's a warm floral in the background. It's definitely got a warm floral background, but I can't really actually identify the floral. It's a very nondescript, just generic kind of floral smell. So actually at this point, the fragrance smells a lot like a fragrance for a shampoo. If I had a shampoo scented with this kind of smell, I'd be very, very happy. It smells very nice like that. I think really as this dries down, it gets worse for me. So there's a bit of a laundry musk here, but it's not a really super grainy laundry musk, but it's just a little bit rough. There's also a really heavy amber. It's a very warm, heavy amber. And I think if you don't like a really heavy amber, you're not going to like this fragrance. It is a very warm smelling fragrance. It makes me think a little bit of Prada Paradoxe. So if you have tried that fragrance, whether you like it or not might determine whether you like this fragrance. The musk in this fragrance also makes me think a little bit of the Alien Mirage flanker. The musk in that flanker is also quite heavy, and I think that it's probably the same one that's in this fragrance. At the point of the dry down in the air, this fragrance smells like a really creamy, fruity floral kind of conditioner almost. It is quite pleasant when you smell it from further away. It's just when you get closer to that laundry musk that it becomes unpleasant. This one for me actually lasted for 12 hours plus on my skin. I was absolutely astounded by the lasting power of this fragrance, and it did project really well as well for the first couple of hours. I thought this one was really quite strong actually. Comparing this with the original Goddess is nowhere near the lasting power, it's nowhere near the strength. Even though this fragrance is a little bit softer in the opening, it's definitely the heavier fragrance by the end of it. Clearly this fragrance has no coconut, it has no vanilla, so it is very, very different to the original Goddess, and it's very, very different to the Goddess Intense as well. Did I like this? No, I didn't really enjoy it. I can't see me ever wanting to buy this one. It's not awful, it's just not something that I love. I think really it all hinges around whether you like Prada Paradoxe. If you like Prada Paradoxe, you'll probably like this one. But this just wasn't for me. So that's Supra Floral from the Alien Goddess line from Mugler. So the next fragrance is one from Giorgio Armani, and this is one of the C line of fragrances. And I'm really confused because we used to have C Intense, but is that still going, or has it been discontinued? Because this one is called C Eau de Parfum Intense. So who knows? So this one is a blackcurrant fragrance, but it's not really a syrupy blackcurrant like the old C was. It's very much more of a lighter blackcurrant, but there's definitely a little bit of a greenness there, and there's also a bit of a peachiness to it. I guess that may be the Divana in this fragrance, but it's not like that furry kind of Divana that you can sometimes get. It's more of a green and peachy kind of Divana. So this, as it dries down, you do get some pink rose, and also from the listed notes, there's more of a black tea feeling than a patchouli feeling. I don't really sense the patchouli in this fragrance at all. As this dries down, it becomes more about the rose and the vanilla in this fragrance than it does about the blackcurrant. The blackcurrant and the fruitiness generally just dies down, and that goes on throughout the fragrance. As this dries down further, it becomes more golden feeling. And the vanilla here is not really like a really gourmand vanilla. It's not like a very watery kind of yogurty vanilla. It's something in the middle of those two. And really, as this dries down further, you get a bit of a woodiness creeping in with the vanilla. But really, it's the vanilla that really dominates the dry down of the fragrance. And I think really it just becomes something that's quite nondescript, because the thing that makes C is really the blackcurrant. That's really the strong thing that really is the distinctive note in C. And it just sort of gets a bit lost really in the dry down. For something that's called itself intense, I think it's quite laughable. When you compare it to the original C from 2013, this is not anywhere near what I would describe as intense. But when I compared it with the current C, I still didn't think it was that intense. So the current C is very much more of a green kind of fruitiness than this one is. And it's very much more leaning towards the blackcurrant, whereas this one's very much more leaning towards the vanilla in the dry down. So I wouldn't say this fragrance really makes me think of any other fragrances other than other fragrances in the C line, but I wouldn't even say that it really resembles C that strongly. But definitely it does have that blackcurrant feeling in the opening. It's most similar to original C in the opening. So really this fragrance I didn't really find to be that intense. It did last a long time on skin. I could still smell it after about 8 hours. But I would say that overall it didn't really project much at all. It was a really quiet one, even in the beginning. And I think really if you're looking for something intense, this is not it. I think if I were going to buy a blackcurrant and rose fragrance, I would not choose this one. I would choose Maison Margiela's Replica On a Date, because I really like that fragrance. I love blackcurrant in fragrances, and that one's a really fruity, really deep and really realistic kind of blackcurrant. This is not quite so fruity or deep or realistic to me. I think this one just isn't for me. There's nothing wrong with it again. It's quite smooth. I think if you like the C line of fragrances, you'll probably like this. But yeah, it just doesn't do it for me. And I think it's a bit of a pointless flanker. It's something that I don't think anybody needed. So that's C Eau de Parfum Intense. So next, let me rank these fragrances. And really this is pretty hard because I can't say any of these jumped out at me, and none of these are things that I would really want to purchase. None of them really excited me, and I think it's just going to be based on how much I like them. But really the most exciting one for me was Gaultier Divine, but I just didn't like it. It just made me feel a bit nauseous, and I think that fragrance really wins on originality stakes. So maybe I should rate that one higher just because it's more original than the others. It's just not my taste. I think other people may like it, so I'm going to put number 4 and number 3 as joint equal. And I'm going to put those as Mugler Supra Floral and also as Gaultier Divine. But I think that Gaultier Divine is maybe edging Supra Floral a little bit. Although Supra Floral was nicer than I imagined it might be from my other experiences of that line. So number 1 and number 2 are also quite a difficult decision because I like both of these fragrances, but neither of them really excited me. And really, one of them really underwhelmed me. And that was Jadore. And I think I'm going to put it there because the Dior fragrance house, I would just expect something a little bit more from them, and I didn't get it. And that was a little bit disappointing. So yeah, Jadore at number 2. And number 1, I'm going to put a C Eau de Parfum Intense. But I do think that that flanker was completely pointless. They didn't need to reformulate the Intense if they have reformulated the Intense. And I just feel like it doesn't really add anything to the line, really. So it's a begrudging kind of number 1. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have enjoyed the video, then please press the like button. And please also consider subscribing if you haven't done already. And please let me know, have you tried any of these fragrances? How would you rank them? Did you enjoy them? And also, have you tried any other new fragrances that you think that I should check out? Please let me know down below. And thank you so much for watching again. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.